Hello everyone and welcome back to another YouTube video. This is just a totally random one that I'm sure none of you have ever seen coming. I don't know if I've really ever been like nervous. I wouldn't say I'm nervous, but like apprehensive or just feel a little bit weird about dropping a video on this channel. But for some reason this is one of those. I've never talked about this because I feel like it's a very personal thing and it's also pretty easy to like hide, I guess, because I guarantee none of you knew about this. But I do indeed have Tourette's syndrome. Why would I choose right now to talk about this of all times? There's a few reasons. The first of which being, when you have Tourette's, you go through periods of time when sometimes they're better and sometimes they're a little bit worse. Right now, currently, I'm going through a period of time where I'm kind of struggling with it a little bit and it's a little bit more annoying to deal with. But another reason I wanted to share is from seeing some of my favorite artists come out and talk about like whatever ailments they're dealing with. Far Caspian, who's probably my favorite artist, has talked about having Crohn's disease. I remember seeing a video of Claro talking about how she deals with this like rheumatoid arthritis thing. So that kind of inspired me to share my little weird condition that I deal with. And also just in general, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings out there about Tourette's syndrome, what it is and what it isn't, and just a lot of people don't know about it in general. So I want to try to spread as much awareness about it as possible. So what actually is Tourette's syndrome? Basically, it's a disorder where you feel the need to make involuntary movements or sounds or just do something involuntary repetitively. So this can be like grunting or blinking or jerking movements, and these specific involuntary actions or movements are called tics. I'm sure you've heard of people having like a nervous tic or something like that. Tics and Tourette's are not the same thing. I know it's a little bit confusing, but tics are the actual movements or sounds or things that you do, and Tourette's is just the name of this disorder that people have. So the tics are uncontrollable. It's something that your body is basically telling you that you have to do. A lot of people relate it to the feeling of having the hiccup and then like stopping yourself from hiccuping. I think that's kind of a bad example because in my experience, hiccuping just happens anyways. I think a better analogy is when you have an itch somewhere on your body and you just choose not to itch it, but it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and you have this really strong urge to itch that part of your body. That's kind of how it feels when you suppress your tics. You just get this uncontrollable urge to do them and you have this uncomfortable feeling until you do that action that your brain is telling you to do. So we actually don't know the exact cause of Tourette's. Like, we don't know why they happen, what part of your brain is like messed up or whatever. There's some research that points to it being some sort of like dopamine deficiency or dysregulation or something. There are quite a few really interesting studies that have been done on it, and I was kind of researching some of them, but it's also a lot of like nerd science speak, like abnormalities in the NRXN1 and CNTN6 genes, which like I have no idea what that means, but that's, I guess, part of what causes it or something. But either way, all you need to know is that there's some sort of chemical imbalance in your brain that causes you to involuntarily make these movements or sounds. And like I said, these tics can be a number of different things for different people, and they can also be caused by a number of different things for different people as well. In my experience, there's definitely a few things that will exacerbate the symptoms. Stress is a huge one, but just strong emotion overall, and that can be good strong emotion or bad strong emotion. So like if I'm really excited about something or if I'm like really overjoyed, I don't know. But I find especially with strong bad emotion. Also, if you're really tired or really sick, they can happen as well. And I noticed that a lot of the time for me, it's certain like external factors that trigger a certain tic to happen. So I'll tell you some of the ones that are most common for me and how they start. One of the ones that's big and I've always really had is when my hair gets really long and kind of gets in my eyes, I'll do this kind of thing. And that'll pretty much last until I cut my hair. And then even when I cut my hair, it'll last for probably like a week after that. Sometimes even more. Also, sometimes randomly, if I have like a pimple on my lip or like by my nose, or if I like cut myself when I'm shaving, I'll do like this kind of a thing and like scrunch my nose up. Also, probably the most annoying one for me is doing this like thing where I like move my throat a bunch or like move my neck. Sort of like a thing, I can't even really recreate it, but I think it happened because maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I started getting sick and I had a little bit of like a tickle in my throat, and that just kind of made my body decide to do that, and it's persisted until now. Another one that I had like totally randomly, depending on the shirt that I'm wearing or whatever, I'll like do this thing with my arm where I'll go like this. And it happens a lot if I can like feel the shirt touching my skin. It's really weird. It sounds like super autistic, but when I was younger in like middle school, I had a lot more vocal tics, so like different like grunting and stuff like that. Also, I definitely get the blinking ones sometimes where I like blink really hard or like go like that. Sometimes just like blowing air out of my nose. This especially happens if I'm sick and my nose is really clogged. I'll do like a thing. That's pretty much the extent of the ones that I experience, but a lot of people have other different ones as well. Some people will have to like touch certain things or like make certain movements or say certain phrases. The one really big misconception that I think almost everybody has is that Tourette's is just yelling swear words or something. Like you're just walking through a store and you just yell out for no reason. That is a thing that does happen for some people, but it's extremely rare. It's like less than 10% of people that have Tourette's have that symptom. Usually when somebody has Tourette's, the symptoms will appear in childhood. It can start as early as like 2 years old, but even as late as like 16 or 17 years old. Typically, the time when you really notice it and it like reaches its height is around like 11 or 12. That was kind of when it happened for me at its most severe. I think it was like right before I was going into 6th grade. So I think I was 11 or 12 when I was like officially diagnosed or whatever. Actually, a lot of the time as kids get older, these symptoms go away. But for some people, they last even when you're an adult and sometimes even get worse when you're an adult. Because it's a neurological disorder, the diagnosis is not as easy as just taking a blood test. Usually, in my experience at least, you have to see a neurologist and then they will kind of run you through some tests to diagnose you. But because of the physical nature of it, it's a lot more straightforward than other disorders where, you know, you go in there and you're like, I feel sad today, and they're like, oh, okay, here's some Zoloft. For it to actually be considered Tourette's and not just a tic disorder, I'm pretty sure you need to have both motor and vocal tics for like a certain period of time. I think for more than like a year or two, and it also has to happen like pretty consistently every day. And also I believe for them to actually consider it Tourette's, it has to happen before you're an adult. So it is like a children's disease, I guess. That being said, it's not an uncommon one. I think it's about like 1 in every 160 kids has Tourette syndrome. And I found this out while researching for this video, but it's actually 3 to 4 times more likely in boys than girls, which is really interesting. I had no idea about that before. Another interesting bit of information I want to add here is that they've done some studies to show girls who are born with the genetic predisposition to potentially have Tourette's are typically more likely to end up having obsessive compulsive disorder than Tourette's. So for that reason, they think that there's a pretty heavy tie there between OCD and Tourette's. Another thing I knew about, but it's really interesting to actually see the numbers on it. So they call them comorbidities, which sounds really dark and ominous, but a comorbidity is basically just a disorder that you have alongside another disorder. So like for example, if you are obese, you also have diabetes, or you have like a heart condition or whatever, like 2 things that operate alongside one another. And I found out that actually 80% of kids with Tourette syndrome also have some sort of other behavioral or mental disorder as well. Really common ones being ADHD and OCD, also anxiety disorders, but I personally feel that those are really overdiagnosed in our society today. They've also seen kids with Tourette's that have speech problems or sleeping problems or other like issues like that. I almost certainly have some variety of ADHD and OCD. I've never been officially diagnosed though, so I'm not gonna like go here and say that that's what I have, but probably I do. As far as the treatment for Tourette's, as you can imagine, since we don't know why it actually happens, there is also no cure that we've discovered for it. There are definitely different ways to deal with it, which I'll share near the end of the video, like things that have helped me, but behavioral therapy is a common one. There also are some pharmaceutical drugs that you can take that may help as well, but like any pharmaceutical drug or substance that you take, there are downsides, which I'll get into that later as well. It also does not affect life expectancy at all. It's not like deadly or anything. It's not a degenerative disease, so like it doesn't affect your brain function or health or anything. I personally consider myself like a reasonably intelligent person, and I've lived with it my whole life, so I can personally confirm that it doesn't really relate to your like intelligence or ability to learn things. It's also very hereditary, so it's usually passed down through generations. Like if somebody's dad's got it, then their kids will have it, then their kids will have it, kind of thing. So yeah, pretty much now that you know what Tourette's is, I can kind of share with you some of my experience and my story of living with it. So I think I remember my mom saying that she noticed it when I was probably like 3 or 4, having some symptoms here and there, but it was never really that bad. And I remember a few instances where I was dealing with some tics when I was a lot younger, but I never really noticed it until I was going into middle school, like I said. So at that point in time, me and my mom decided that it was probably the best idea to go to a neurologist, because I was experiencing them to the point where it was pretty uncomfortable and also just not enjoyable to every single second be having to do one of these like motions or sounds or whatever. So I went to the neurologist and they did just like a bunch of random tests on me. Like they would tap different parts of my body and like see if I could walk in a straight line properly. It's a lot of just like neurological brain tests they put you through. And that was when I was actually properly diagnosed. And I think some point later in time, or maybe around then, they put me on some medication for it. There were 2 medications that I took. I started out taking one, and then I think later on, as it like kind of didn't really get much better, they added another one. I would say honestly they worked pretty well for me all through middle school and high school, to the point where I really wasn't having them too often and it wasn't super noticeable. I would still definitely experience tics throughout the day, just here and there, but it wasn't to the same level level as when I was going into middle school. So the medication definitely helped me for a while, but it definitely had its downsides as well. I felt like when I was taking it, I was very tired. It's hard to accurately judge because I also had a really bad sleep schedule and I was like kind of an insomniac. But even when I would get a full proper night's sleep, I would still be so tired to the point where like I couldn't even keep my eyes open when I'm like sitting in the car or sitting on the couch or whatever. Also, I noticed that if I were to accidentally forget the medication and skip it, I would just feel really weird. Like I couldn't get a proper night's sleep, and it also would just kind of affect my dreams in weird ways. I just felt totally off. In my opinion, you don't really want to feel like your natural, unaffected state is a weird state to be in. I really only just stopped taking it about like a year ago or a year and a half ago. I slowly just kind of weaned myself off of it because I felt like I was still just having the tics so much, even while taking a decent dose of the medication. And then when I weaned myself off of the medication, I noticed that the tics were like honestly even better than they were when I was taking it. And I just felt better as a person. I felt like I had more life in me. I felt more clear-headed. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of taking pharmaceutical drugs for many things at all, but there are some cases where it might be helpful for certain periods of your life, but you don't really want to be on medication for, you know, your entire life. It's not ideal. So yeah, I obviously still have the tics and I go through periods of time where it's worse than others. Really early middle school and also like pretty much my whole life. It's been pretty tough dealing with it, obviously. I'm not gonna act like it's all just, you know, like sunshine and rainbows or whatever, because it's really annoying at times, especially when you're in a period of life where you're already kind of stressed about something and then you're dealing with like these motions or movements that you're having to do over and over. It just gets really bothersome and really annoying. And especially for me, what I do, like being on camera and filming myself, it can be really particularly annoying for that reason. Also in school, there's a lot of kids that don't really understand it or even know what Tourette's is. So I think it's really important to teach your kids about it and have them learn that some people have this disorder. Because even when I was in school, there was kids that like thought it was weird that I was doing these noises. And I was always like a pretty tall kid and like a little bit bigger at certain points in my life. So nobody really messed with me. But I could imagine kids getting like bullied or picked on for this. And so I think it's really good to let your kids know that this is a thing that exists. And also for you as a person or parent to know that this is not just your kid doing these things to like seek attention. Because that's a big misconception too, is that, oh, my kid's just doing this because he wants to get my attention or he wants to like make noises or whatever. There are kids who do that for sure, who just make noises because it's fun to make noises. But Tourette's is not an uncommon condition, so it's quite possible that your kid might actually have it and that's why they're doing these things. As annoying as it may be to deal with Tourette's, I also am inclined to believe, based on absolutely no scientific evidence or information at all, that having Tourette's might alter certain things in your brain that will make you end up being more creative or more artistic, or just potentially alter your brain in ways that might be beneficial or good. There's all these comorbidities and stuff that happen alongside Tourette's, but what about co-vitalities? I don't know, it's a word that I just made up, but that might be a thing, you know? I remember hearing a thing that Mozart had Tourette's, so basically I'm Mozart, pretty much. Let's see, famous people that have Tourette's. Oh, Billie Eilish, I remember that. Yeah, Billie Eilish has Tourette's apparently. Seth Rogen's got Tourette's. David Beckham, he's got Tourette's. Howie Mandel, Dan Aykroyd. Ethan from H3 is another one that I always think of as well. That was actually part of the reason why I became a big H3 fan in the golden days of YouTube. I saw just this average dude making hilarious videos and I was like, oh, he's like me. He's got my problems. Another thing I want to talk about is things that have helped me deal with my Tourette's, because hopefully some of the things that I've learned will be able to help other people out there. Absolute most important thing you can do is work on your diet and exercise and just living a healthy lifestyle. Like that is the most important thing you can do for any disorder or disease or anything. I notice big time increases in tics when I have a lot of sugar, or if I eat any like artificial food coloring, or if I have caffeine. I like drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, so that's tough for me. But also just eating processed foods and foods that are just not good for you, they're gonna bring out your tics a lot. Meditation and breathing techniques, huge, massive. Try to develop a little routine of meditation that you can actually stick to, whether it's right before bed or in the morning. Another massive thing is do the stuff that you love to do. I've noticed for me, and I think this is common for most people, is that when your brain is actively engaged and focused on something, you don't have the Tourette's as much. If I'm lifting weights, like I'm bench pressing or whatever, I'm not having tics when I'm doing that. Also, if I'm playing on the drums or I'm playing guitar, don't have them either. If I'm really actively engaged and focused on drawing or writing or editing a video or whatever, definitely try to focus on doing things that actively engage you and make your brain focus on something that you like. Drinking water, staying hydrated, staying healthy, all that stuff. All these things that you would think would help with this will help with this. So yeah, these factors alone will help in so many other areas. And for the people who deal with Tourette's and the other like comorbidities, I'm a real firm believer that the majority of people these days do not actually deal with any sort of chronic anxiety or depression or any of these other things that are like buzzwords now. More often than not, you're just inside on your phone all day, not eating healthy, not exercising. So yeah, you're gonna feel really bad. Fix those things and a lot of things in your life will be better, I promise you. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say for this one. Definitely a weird video to make, and I don't know if any of you will even watch this anyways, but for those of you who have made it this far, really appreciate you just taking the time to listen and learn about this thing that I deal with and that a lot of other people deal with as well. And I do think it's important to learn about these other things that your fellow neighbors and people around you go through. Knowledge is power, after all. Or so they say. Even though this sucks and I hate dealing with it, and I'll probably deal with it for the rest of my life, I wouldn't have it any other way because I am who I am. I don't regret any part of myself or any experience that I've ever been through in my life. Everything that we as people have gone through and experienced and everything about us is so important to each and every one of our development and growth as a person. I really appreciate you all being here and supporting me and watching these videos. Just remember that everybody has something wrong with them, but it's what's wrong with us that makes us who we are. So appreciate you guys. Catch you in the next one.